What's up, guys? Welcome to Found Flicks. Paul and I just got back from seeing Doctor Strange, the latest offering from Marvel, and they're here to give you our review and our thoughts on the most mystical Marvel movie to date. Because it's got magicians in it, I guess. Right?
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of
a lot of magicians.
Well, sorcerers, excuse me.
Sorcerers.
It's way more hardcore to call them sorcerers than magicians.
Yeah.
Right? So when it comes to Marvel movies now, it's almost like you kind of know what to expect from them in a way. Like there's not too much to differentiate one from another, and I think that's probably like the biggest weakness of the Marvel kind of line or cinematic universe to me, I guess.
It feels oddly kind of late to the game to be getting another origin story.
I think what a big problem for me was going through the motions of an origin story again with a character that they waited this long to make a movie out of, for a reason. I mean, that was the thing, is that I was like, I'm not too familiar with the comics, but I was like, maybe this is what the character is in the comics, and it's not that great. I don't know, I guess. But ultimately, as I was saying, the sort of chapter-esque feel to Marvel movies, this one did feel a little more self-contained, but it was kind of like almost too much too. Like it was too simplified overall, I guess, compared to some of the other ones. Like they were just like the same few locations and stuff like that. If you know what I mean?
Yeah. It was different in that they made a nod to the Avengers, and they mentioned, I guess it was supposed to be kind of a big reveal that what the time thing that he was using was an Infinity Stone, which clearly wraps into Marvel. But, even with something like Ant-Man, they still included that scene where he fought with the Falcon, so that you felt a little more
it's all part of the connective tissue
and
of the universe.
Yeah, and this definitely lacked that.
Yeah. Until the post-credits scene, of course.
Sure.
But one other kind of overall complaint that I have about Marvel is the visuals are kind of like very pedestrian a lot of times in the movies. It's like they get the job done, but this movie obviously blew the pants off of any of the other Marvel movies with that stuff.
Yeah, we
did see it in 3D, which was totally worth it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's got a lot of almost like psychedelic visuals in one scene that were like way out there. I mean, like I did not expect to see.
Well, for you talk about that scene, you talk about the like middle action scene, the cityscape, the one that you see a lot in the trailer.
Yeah, I was gonna say you see some of that in the trailer, the sort of folding Inception city-esque thing, and that's what's going on during action sequences, and it's pretty badass. And again, that was actually just like a welcome thing to see in this, as far as just very creative visually, and just wishing that the story had that much to it. I mean, I guess just the character itself, especially at the beginning, the character was just like almost too much of a dick at first.
He was an asshole.
Yeah, and it was just like the sort of particular delivery that he had and stuff like that, it just was too abrasive. It wasn't charming anymore. Yeah. And so it made it so that you couldn't really root for the character a lot. It's interesting, again, the character is like as I was saying, like a rock star, surgeon, I guess, neurosurgeon, and so it's all about his hands, and of course in the most ridiculous car wreck that's ever happened. Be careful when you're looking on your tablets when you're driving, folks, because he was looking at some like x-ray scans and then goes flying off the road and messed his hands up, It's not good. Gotta pay attention to that in the future. I did like that after all of that, it didn't like take his hands off. It just like broke his hands.
Yeah.
And his legs were fine and stuff, but it was like the car's flipping through the air and flipping around for like at least a minute on screen.
Yeah, and then they purposely show a shot where like his hands go. Like,
there was like an insert of like crush hands. Ow!
Yeah, it's funny that like without that having happened to his hands, like despite the ridiculousness of the car wreck, he would have come out of it fairly okay otherwise.
Yeah, which was surprising in and of itself, right?
Yeah, I mean, he doesn't need his legs, break a couple of his legs.
A couple of his legs.
He can
get by with 4 or 5, it's fine. It's got extra. Yeah, and then once, obviously after the whole wreck thing and his hands are broken and he goes kind of obsessive trying to figure out how to fix his hands because he's just, his life to him is being a successful surgeon and, ends up seeking out, thanks to, it was Benjamin Bratt, right, that he meets on the b-ball court? Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I even thought that was it just felt a little weird that it's like, hey, I'm just going to go meet this guy. And he's like, well, you got to go to Cavalgabland or whatever. That's where you get fixed up,
Yeah.
Strange, meets up with the Ancient One and Mordo. Mm-hmm. I keep wanting to say Morbo from Futurama, and that's not correct. So obviously he goes through this whole training process. And again, it just felt like the movie never really was that exciting to me during that whole process. It's like, okay, I know that I have to sit here and I have to watch this character develop his magic skills and be introduced to this mystical world and these characters. It was like it was too slow at parts and then it was too fast in his actual development of his skills. Whereas suddenly he's skipped from like, oh, we spent all this time in these parts and now in between scenes where there's not actually any time cut out, he's suddenly like a master. Oh, he finally shaved. That was actually another funny thing. I was wondering how many times they would involve shaving in the movie.
Well, a lot.
There actually were several times. I mean, I know his beards or his little goatee's a thing, but it was like almost a sub-theme in the movie was like man and his beard and
he shaves
shaving.
Himself, lady shaves him.
But then it's like, and then his hands don't work so good, so he can't shave himself.
Scared, so he doesn't shave.
Yeah, and then later he's like,
then...
listen, I should have gotten an electric razor in the first place, and then that's when he gets his goatee on. Because, you know, you can't do as much damage with one of those, so...
Yeah, that was in the movie.
That's true. That is something that actually happened. Lots of facial grooming. That was definitely a highlight of the movie for me. I was like, what kind of beard is he going to have next? Big part of the movie that kind of was a little, just made it harder to sit through was how much exposition there was in almost every scene. It's like, because the whole concept is so out there, there's all these specific elements, obviously from the comics and characters and things that they have to sit there and, you know, kind of guide your hand through for a normal audience. So it's so overstuffed with exposition. It feels like it never stops trying to explain to you what's going on. There's even like a scene where he's like, well then, I don't even know what's going on. Why don't you tell me? And he's like, well, okay, sounds good. Go into the ancient mystical room and I'll tell you that we, you know, protect the world from bad guys from space or whatever.
Yeah, it's like, so we have an underwritten bad guy. Let's learn about him during an action scene where
training scene.
Training scene where he's sparring with Mordo, and it kind of just comes up for no reason, just because you need to learn about this bad guy, because in about 10 minutes he's going to be in the movie.
He's going to be doing bad guy things, so and you need some kind of establishment.
Him. Yeah.
Interesting that you mentioned the Ancient Scrolls, because that is something that's very important, and is a very, very long story. Allow me to fill in all of the details about the past.
About halfway through the movie, I kind of took a step back and was like, you know, for the caliber of this movie, being, you know, kind of a popcorn superhero movie, I was surprised at kind of how the cast they managed to cobble together for this.
That is true. They actually are very high caliber actors. I wasn't necessarily blown away by Benedict, I would say. He was fine, but he didn't embody like every element of the character. Also, again, it wasn't written that well in that sense. I would say that I was very impressed with Tilda Swinton in it as the Ancient One or whatever. She had this kind of like fun but kind of, you know, cold energy to her as well.
Yeah, there was something
like a playful god.
Playful god. Exactly. Yeah. Well, I mean, and I already sort of thought that Tilda Swinton was an immortal god, so it was kind of, I don't think it was a very challenging role for her.
You mean in real life you think that, is what you're saying. Okay, gotcha. Exactly. She's been using the dark magics as well, probably. What did you think about the villain in this movie? I mean, another Marvel problem overall is there's a villain problem, like their villains are like kind of the same or just not very well executed or interesting a lot of times, you know, except Loki. You always got Loki.
I like Loki. Same problem. Again, like we said, they had to have a sparring scene of exposition to even learn about this bad guy, which I still don't think you learned too much about.
It didn't really help. You're like, this guy did some bad stuff, and then now he's bad.
And then even when Strange has him incapacitated, they give him
like another
a monologue to
sort
of explain why he's doing what he's doing, which still totally didn't make sense, other than that it's going to make him live forever, and that's basically what you don't really know why.
Well, he's gonna live forever, but he's got to bring the evil guy to the planet to eat it.
Yeah, but I love Mads Mikkelsen,
of course.
I could watch him eat a bowl of cereal.
They did give him a little more layers than I might have expected. Like, he just did more talking, like, as you know, talking between him and Strange in that scene, where he's kind of like joking and stuff. And at least they had some layers to that. I'm sure that's all because of Mads being an actual like good actor.
Sure, yeah.
That it would feel a little more developed when it really is like bone thin on the page, basically. Yeah, as you mentioned, I would say that it had funnier moments overall than I would have expected, which I don't think was always a bad thing, but it was kind of still surprising. Like it
was surprising. I mean,
I don't think that it needed it.
No.
But it was just like surprising how much it was actually included into it. And sometimes it worked and sometimes it didn't. I mean, and even his actual cape, which is a big part of the character, was...
comic relief?
It was a comic relief CG cape.
Yeah.
That's actually exactly what it was. And again, I didn't expect that. And I don't know that I necessarily needed it either.
The audience responded to it.
That's true. There was a lot of people laughing.
Yeah.
No matter what was coming out of their mouths. They were just ready to get their chuckle on. They were just like waiting, like, please. Is the cape going to come back and hurt some more people? I hope so. That's what I paid for. It didn't. That's true. It should have saved the day at the end. It's still, I have to give them a lot of creativity for being able to even come up with, like, a very new style to an action scene.
Yeah.
Like, that's something that's very, very difficult. Like, everything's been done. Now you got folding buildings and shit and people getting crushed by them.
And I know that you do sort of get used to it, but if you just take that scene in, like, the mirror world, where, like, you're really seeing the visual city kind of fall apart and move around and stuff, like, that just, in and of itself, as a standalone scene, like, the time and effort and creativity put into that.
Yeah, it looks fucking amazing.
I don't know how.
Yeah, that's something that to me is very hard as like a jaded moviegoer, is to be like genuinely wowed by something that you're seeing on screen. You know what I mean? And I think they actually pulled it off.
No,
so that is like a feat in and of itself,
no,
really.
Absolutely. Like, if anything, there was too much. I could watch that scene on a loop and probably appreciate something different every time.
That's true. They should have just cut all the other exposition out and just had a bunch of buildings folding.
Well, no, they just should have had all the exposition in that scene.
That's true. It should have, because they don't think they really even said much. It should have been like,
no, they
well,
said
in
nothing.
Case you wondered about the past of Mads, here's the story. And then the final scene was also very interesting because they had sort of a time going in reverse element to it, where Strange is using the same eye of whatever, the Infinity Stone thing that can actually manipulate time.
Well, and it was kind of interesting because they essentially lost. And they had
That's
to use
true.
the time
That's
because
true.
they were too
by
late
the time,
to get there.
By the time they got to where the place was, it had already blown up.
Yeah.
So what are you going to do? It's like
half the city looks like it
and,
had collapsed.
And the guy has already come from space with his like floating, planetarium or whatever that was.
Whatever.
Little DNA blobs or something. And then Strange, finally he figures it out. Like, I'm not sure how I can defeat them, but then he flies and goes and talks to the outer space god guy or whatever.
Yeah.
It was just a big head.
Big face.
Big face, yeah.
There was no time.
That's what the whole thing was with that particular space guy.
So to actually go into his universe with the concept of time somehow gave Doctor Strange the advantage to kick this guy's ass.
Well, it was sort of that whole, it was one of the rules of robotics or something like that. If you ask, it's like, if I cannot lie, then a lie is not a lie, and then it makes the robot's head explode or whatever.
Right.
That's what it felt like to me, though.
Absolutely,
it's like, okay, so this monster can't, doesn't have time in its universe, and then so Strange is like, actually, it's 3:15, and it's like, what is time? And then its head explodes.
Yeah, exactly.
But there's this sort of looping element to it where Strange is like, I'm here to bargain with you, and then the monster just keeps murdering him over and over for many times. Paul, I have come to bargain for your cookie.
No.
Paul, I have come to bargain for your cookie.
No.
Paul, I am here to bargain for the cookies. Paul, I'm here to bargain for the cookies. Paul, I'm here to bargain. So Strange wins by making a time loop and annoying a giant face in space.
Yeah, he annoys a god to just give up.
Stop trying.
15 minutes.
Yep, that's true. But and then Mads and the other guys just get sucked up into the space vortex or whatever.
Yeah.
It's all just a setup for the next one, though, as usual.
Well, as usual.
Yeah. But yeah, so when it comes to the post-credit scenes for this one, you get 2 of them. Mm-hmm. That's how they do it, as usual now too. One's not enough anymore. The people are like, eventually there'll just be a whole movie that plays in the credits.
Yes.
It's like, did you stay until the credits? There was that second movie after the credits, and it was the tits.
Well, they already did that for Ghostbusters.
That's true. That scene that was cut out with all the great dancing with Thor. We'll see you in the credits for that one. Or pick up the extended cut out now on digital ultraviolets. In the first post-credit scene, we have, I guess what would connect us to Thor Ragnarok, where it's Strange is talking to Thor And I hope that scene was directed by Taika Waititi or whatever, because it already felt like the vibe was like more funny and kind of like amusing than Strange ever was.
Yeah.
You know, they're in New York and they're meeting up with Strange, and I guess it's Loki is actually who Strange wants to find or whatever.
He wants to find him to. He's like, you get this guy back to. If you guys all go back.
Just
to
go
Asgard,
back to Asgard. Get out of the planet.
You, so.
Yeah, and they're looking for Odin. And so, I mean, I guess that he would be on Earth, because why else would they be on Earth unless Odin somehow transported there?
Or he's just going to take... Yeah, it seems like there's going to be some Earth stuff that I don't think...
Yeah, we were both surprised by that to even see that Thor was even going to be on Earth at all, let alone interacting with Strange. Or maybe, like we were saying, maybe that'll just be at the end of Thor, actually, is when he's got to come to New York, and hopefully New York isn't under attack by an alien invasion in that one. I would really be bummed.
That'd be cool.
What a novel idea, right? They're like space worms, you know? That'd be like really cool. Maybe robots. I don't know. We'll see. And then the second one, after sitting through about 12 minutes of people that painted buildings going into different directions, so they actually deserve all the credit. After waiting through all that shit, you finally get to the second sting, I guess, or teaser, which is for, I guess, Doctor Strange 2.
I imagine.
Where Mordo, who was pals with him, or sort of more adversarial a little bit, because they kind of get more at odds over time about, because, you know, Strange broke all these rules that the Ancient One had, and even though the Ancient One broke rules, and that's who taught him about the rules, he's still, like, way about the rules.
Oh, man.
So don't forget about the rules. He goes and pursues Benjamin Bratt, and is, like, coming to find out, you know, more about him or whatever, but obviously it's just there to kill him.
Too many sorcerers.
Yeah, too many sorcerers. And takes his magic soul, I guess is what it was, essentially.
Mojo.
His mojo. Mojo by Mordo. That'll be the sequel's title. Or how Mordo got his mojo back. Please call it that.
That's fitting.
That's pretty good. Alright, so it's another chapter in the ever-expanding Marvel Universe in the books. The Doctor Strange, the first one, another origin story. Basically, it was just mediocre as a whole. It definitely had some highlights and some definite factors to it that have kind of become more of a plaguing thing to Marvel movies overall, where they're very formulaic. But overall, it's still an entertaining time and, you know, worth checking out. But what did you guys think about Doctor Strange? Let us know in the comments below. Paul is going to already be in the comments waiting for your opinions. He's down there, and so don't say anything mean, because he'll cry. He's very emotional.
Yes.
Alright guys, well that's it for me and Paul this time, and thanks for watching Found Flicks. We'll see you real soon.